Yo, 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 what's going on, you guys? Today I'm making a video on something I don't really understand. I don't really know the definition all the way of what a canon event is. I looked it up and I take it to mean something that will happen to you. It's like a dramatic event that will happen to you if you have like a dramatic life. Canon event, canon has to do with like something in movies, right? So I'm taking this to mean like if you were a main character, then all these will happen to you. But I kind of got like a graph going on, so let me show you that. Okay, so here is our graph. So it goes from happens to had to happen to this is canon. So on the right side of the graph, that's the stuff where it's like a very canon event. You know, something that like if you are truly a main character, if you have had, a series of unfortunate and interesting events happen to you, these will all have happened to you. Happens is more where it's just something where it's like a common life event. So I'm going to start this off by putting gaining sentience over here in happens, because while for some people they might really remember this moment and it might be very impactful, it's something that everybody experiences and is usually memorable to everybody. I can remember where I was, like the moment where I like really realized I was a person, you know what I mean? And for a lot of people, they can remember it because it has to do with some sort of piece of media that makes them like think really deep, you know? Okay, so now for example of the other side of the pendulum, right here, we got losing your V card. I would put this in I'm putting this in super duper canon because this is one of those things where it's like almost everybody has some sort of like story that is significant, even if it's not necessarily one that they would want to tell. There's just so much anticipation around, losing your V card that there's like normally it leaves an impact on you. It'll affect, you going forward in some certain ways. For some people, it won't. A lot of like older generations, they describe, it in a very strange manner. I feel like that has to do with society not being so open about that stuff in the past. Nowadays, you will probably remember it. It'll probably be impactful and significant. So that's why we're putting it over there, because the type of person that you are will normally like affect that. You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, now what should I do next? Okay, this is friend group breakup. All right, I'm putting this in like kind of like more on the canon side. I'm not putting these like super like a ton like ranking over each other, but I guess I am. But a friend group breakup, it's one of those things where it's like if you're one of those people who you like to just have like one-on-one hangouts, maybe this has never happened to you. But if you are one of those people who has had, a lot of stuff happen to you in your life, there is guaranteed at some point in your life, you had a group of friends and everybody for some reason just kind of had to stop being friends, like sort of all of a sudden. Now, sometimes it's not really like a lot of people. Now the reason it's not higher up on this list is because a lot of people, they make all their friends in high school and then they all have to go off to college, and it kind of like breaks up the friend group. So that's why it's not more canon. But for some people, they can have like really interesting stories, like maybe multiple people are dating and then there's like a breakup or like something like that. So that's why I'm putting it over there, because normally it's like something that's like very brutal, so you might actually like lose friends, and that might change the way that you move going forward socially. So now I'm putting now I got some kind of harder ones. So I want to put this one way back here, discovering music, because everybody at a certain point, they're like growing up listening to music. You listen to songs and then you just find the music that really impacts you. A lot of people in the music community though are very present and like understand the concept that the music that you like for your entire life is based off of the music that you're listening to in your youth. You will go forward, because all your memories of your youth are attached to those songs. So that's the music that you will like. Obviously that can change for some people, but yeah, I'm just kind of putting it up. It happens. It's sort of a little bit more towards canon than just gaining sentience, because for some people, the music that they listen to dramatically changes their entire life. Now for the next one, I feel like this one's pretty big, but we're only putting it, kind of on on the tail end of had to happen, and that is the phase. Now, we are talking about specifically, a sort of phase that manifests in a fashion sense, but everybody goes through some sort of phase. I would say that there's two kinds of trajectories you go through. You have one sort of style your entire life, you go through a phase, and then you continue on with your life. Or the second one where you just have a very cringe, you're just a very, like, you just regret who you were as a youth when you become an adult. Now, for a lot of people, it's called the phase, but it's usually called the emo phase. I'm someone who's like still kind of like a little bit alternative. I really like the color black, and I listen to alternative music and underground music. But there was an era, high school, where I started dressing, just really extreme, and it definitely inspired the way that I dress now. But there's a few years where I was just really experimenting, and that was what I'm considering the phase. Yeah, even people who are alternative and they like find some sort of subculture and they continue on, the phase of being a youth will always be different from what you do kind of moving forward. So this is a kind of a canon event, but yeah. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna put this one. I feel like this is a kind of a pretty canon event, but I actually have to put it like not that high up on the list because technically everyone will get dumped, but getting dumped is one of those things where it's like, that's a canon event, it is. Everybody can remember the first time that they got broken up with. It's kind of similar to like having a friend group breakup where it's like you just spend so much time on something and then it's all just like thrown away, that like sort of that straight drop off from like the way you were before to the way you were after. You usually have like a lot of strong emotions attached to that, so it's pretty memorable. Getting dumped can also like have, if you have a very canon event filled life, getting dumped might have some sort of story attached to it, or like some sort of thing gets involved, like maybe some sort of cheating or something like that, Getting dumped, definitely very canon. All right, now this is one of those things where I truly believe okay, so canon event, it has to do with your life, and it like has to do with your life in the context of like movie terminology, right? So it's like if someone was watching you, they're watching your life move forward, they're going to care about stuff that is super dramatic, right? Those are going to be the canon events. So being in the friend zone, like really falling in love with someone who you're super close friends with, that's usually a really canon event for people. And I'm not putting it up towards the very top, saying this is like the most canon thing. I'm kind of putting it more towards had to happen because it does happen to a lot of people at some point in their lives. But for a lot of people, it is one of their most canon events. Like a lot of people can remember this. The reason for this is because you're like super affectionate for someone, but you're super close to them as a friend and they don't know that you're super affectionate. So you're spending tons of time doing something that, if you were looking at it on paper, it might seem kind of intimate. Friendships are, the closest thing to relationships because you're spending tons of time together. So, just having like that long of conversations, like maybe you're playing video games for hours and hours every single day and you totally have feelings, or the other person totally has feelings. The friend zone is brutal, very canon event. Maybe it'll make you a cold, cold calculated heart eater as you move forward, or maybe you will stay friends with that person forever, and that's why it can be really canon, is when you stay friends with them. Now we are putting situationship at the very forefront of this is canon. I guess because I'm not that creative, honestly, but a lot of people, they describe usually the situationship as like their true love. Like a lot of people be like, having very long, feelings about that. It's kind of a meme where it's like, oh, person that I was dating for super long, break up, it's whatever. Situationship, who I talked to for a few months. Oh, but I dated. Whoa, that's the crazy one. That one really hurts me. That one haunts me, Which is like, I don't know. I don't personally experience that. But, kind of to each their own. And I think the situationship really changes people because a lot of people, they go forward in their lives, having relationships where it's very clear cut. And even if the relationship ends badly, it ended. So it's like you kind of like your feelings are very like, clear cut, versus a situationship. I feel like it's something where you have to think. You have to think a lot about your emotions. So that can be super canon because it can make you question everything if you just spend tons of time thinking. Like the more introspecting you're thinking about them, you're thinking about how you feel about them, you're thinking about how you feel, you're thinking about how you feel in relation to them. All this stuff can be super canon, can be super, behavioral altering, can be story altering. And yeah, so that's my video on canon events. Comment down below if you think that you might actually be a main character, because all of these have happened to you and they all have been crazy and significant. If you just have a crazy story that is one of these canon events and it's crazy for you, comment that story down below. If you like the video, click like. If you want to see more videos, subscribe. I don't really know what this channel is. I'm a skateboarder and I do art, so a lot of my videos are about like output and stuff like that. But a lot of my videos also have to do with interpersonal relationships and social dynamics and stuff like that, just because it's something fun to talk about. And yeah, that if you want to see more of that, hit that subscribe button. If you don't want to do that, sorry, I hate to be you, son. Peace.